go
Let's do
ahead
it.
and get started. Yep. So good morning, good afternoon, depending upon where you're logging in from. Welcome to Get Googleable SEO Tips for Staffing. TCI Business Capital is happy to host this webinar presented by Jeff Pelliccio, founder of Allied Insights. A quick note, make sure you put your questions in the Q&A or chat. Both Jeff and I will be paying attention to that as we go along, and we'll make sure those questions are addressed either during the webinar or at the end. We are recording the webinar, so within the next couple of business days, we'll be sending out an email with a link to the recording. Before jumping into content, just a super quick introduction of TCI. We provide funding in the form of accounts receivable financing, which is really an alternative to a bank line of credit. And you might wonder, what does funding have to do with marketing? And on the surface, the answer is nothing. But having that solid cash flow, having that working capital, it really does allow you to invest in things like marketing and technology and other things to grow your business. But additionally, we just feel it's valuable to our clients and to our prospects to host events like this, just so you may learn from other industry experts. My name is Sherry Tischer. I lead or drive TCI's staffing practice. My background is in staffing. Prior to joining TCI, I spent 15 years directly in the industry. But we are not here today to talk about that. We're here to talk about marketing. So with that, I'm going to pass the stage over to Jeff from Allied Insights.
Awesome. Sherry, thank you so much. And there is actually some overlap in what it is that you do in marketing, and the fact that, like, if you're able to take care of your candidates and make sure that you have your payments going out in a certain way, you can use all of that information as a means to position your company really well, and use it as a marketing tactic when doing recruitment marketing as well as your sales marketing. So, well, Sherry, I appreciate you having us here, and I appreciate obviously TCI supporting us to help bring this information to your group. I'm Jeff Pelliccio. For those of you who don't know me, I am the founder of Allied Insight. Allied Insight is a full stack marketing agency. So we do everything from, handling your website to your content to your marketing communications, PR, and our approach really is a holistic one. So marketing for the sake of marketing is I don't know, it's not very fun. It's not very fun, and it's not also massively effective. But when you use a holistic marketing approach that it applies to your entire business, you end up seeing better results as well as stronger usability from an enablement perspective with sales and recruiting. I've personally been in staffing for about 10 years. I have a weird affinity for pandas. So as well as, like, I like to geek out with my drone and GoPro and go hiking and all these kind of things. So it's a little bit about me, a little bit about the company. And without further ado, we will get into the thing that everybody came here for. So getting Googleable SEO pro tips for staffing. So first things first, webinars are boring. They are boring beyond sin. So let's keep this one really collaborative. If you have questions, if you have anything that you want to sort of chime in on, please feel free to put something into the chat. As Sherry said, we're going to be monitoring it throughout the conversation. And if there's any sort of questions that we can answer for you as we're going through, let's keep it as an active conversation as we can. So the very first thing we're going to do is we're going to just do a quick poll and ask, has your staffing agency prioritized SEO in the past? And it's just a simple yes, no. Doesn't have to be anything in particular with regards to SEO, but literally any of the SEO functions. Have you guys prioritized it in the past? Sherry, will you be able to launch that, or do you want me to launch it?
I will launch it.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
You're welcome. Hey, I'm here to help, Jeff.
Love it. So I'm just going to kind of put that to the side, and we will get the poll results in just a second. In the meantime, we're going to keep pushing through and give people opportunity to answer that question. When it comes to SEO, SEO is really like information and content architecture, right? So, oh, look at that. We have the results. So before we go any further, sometimes it's these things that aren't planned. That's nice.
Moving backward, Jeff.
Yes, going back to what we first said. So this is great news, right? 78% of you have participated in some SEO exercises, and 22% have not. The good news is this: there's always opportunity to be able to participate in SEO. So whether you have or you haven't, you're in the right place. I hope that you'll be able to learn something, either a new tactic, new approach, or a new initiative that you can take to your staffing agency to be better, stronger, faster tomorrow. So as I was saying, SEO is really built on an information and content architecture, and it's no different than if you were to build a house, making sure that you have a good foundation when then moving into like a well-planned and prepared like staging or framing, so that you know like where are your walls, where are your windows, where are your doors, and then moving into like the frequency of doing things. So like the using of those tools or those components in order to really, at the end of the day, gain authority. So in this instance, your foundation here that we're really talking about is your website. So making sure that structurally, your website has all the things that it needs in place in order to be seen as a proper environment to bolster content. So that's making sure that you have things like sitemaps and that you're utilizing the best practices of like the organization of your site, so that if something is a blog or an event or content or what have you, that you have all those fundamental sort of like programming elements in place, followed by the structure of whatever it is that you're propping up. So this is your static pages, your articles and so forth, your footer even, that it is in fact doing as it's intended, so that it makes it easier for search engines to crawl and understand what it is that you're trying to prop up. From there, you move into frequency. So how frequently are you updating your content? And this is not an idea of like, I need to update my homepage every day. That's not what I'm talking about in terms of frequency, but you will have more consumable content on your website in certain areas than in others. A blog happens to be a great example of where you would have frequent content updating. But ensuring that you're managing your website consistently and frequently will also, again, lead to really strong, good SEO health. And when you have these first three things in place, you're doing it all to get a domain authority score. And so basically that's out of 100 points, you will be graded by Google, Bing, Yahoo, et cetera. And they will then say that your domain authority is a 9 or an 80 or a 50 or a whatever. And so as you continue to move up the ranks, domain authority will give you an easier time of being propped up in the search engine results page, or SERP findings. So
Jeff,
with that basic, yes.
I have a question.
Go for it.
Not being, in the marketing space, how do you learn what your domain authority score is?
Sure. So with your domain authority score, you can get that stuff within Google, right? You can identify your domain authority. There's also some outside resources that we're going to get into a little bit later on that you can also identify your domain authority in there as well. They'll also give you, some of the products will give you their own variation on a domain authority. So it's all in a matter of like, SEO is a holistic concept because there are so many facets, and we're going to dig into it, but it's a holistic concept, meaning that there is a technical component to it. There is something called an on-page component to it. There's also an off-page or backlinking. And so it's taking all of those bits and pieces and all of the like kind of moving the levers and numbers in different directions. And that is what sort of gives you your domain authority.
Okay.
So why is SEO so important? Why is optimized content architecture something that we're talking about today? The reason is, number one, we're going to be talking a lot in terms of Google. Why? Google currently has 86.86% of the search engine market. And this was a statistic from earlier this year. So it could be a little bit lower, it could be a little bit higher, but as of earlier in 2022, this was accurate. They also say that high quality content and link building are the important signals when it comes to Google and ranking your website. So making sure that the content is good for your audience. So you might say like, well, how do we figure out if content is good for your audience? It's all in the behavior that it ends up provoking. So let's just say, for instance, we may or may not have heard of the term clickbait. So like if you've posted something with a really provocative title that gets someone to click into it, they open up that page, whatever it is, whether it be a static page, meaning one of your main pages on your website, or a blog. But if the content doesn't align, then that person will likely bounce out of your website or leave quickly, right? So if they leave quickly, that's considered a bounce. If you have a very high bounce rate, then the search engines have to assume that the quality of the content is not great, right? So basically what you're trying to do is you're trying to use all the framework of how search engines grade you, along with how the content performs with your audience, whether they like it or not, if they click to other things within your website, or if they just leave you. And all of that kind of comes into play when they say your website is good or it's not. And there's a lot of variations in between. The first 5 pages of Google result in 67% of the clicks. That's huge, right? So if you can get to the first 5 pages, that is where the majority of the clicks are coming from. Doing SEO for a website is 5 times more effective than pay-per-click advertising. And I would argue that in staffing, it's likely to be more than 5 times effective, because in staffing, we do have this sort of challenge where if employers are looking for a staffing agency to get support, they're looking for staffing agencies in their area. And if candidates are looking for a staffing agency to get support, they're looking for staffing agencies in their area. So the keywords are competitive on both sides of this fence with both personas that you're targeting. So it's likely that when you create content and you use good quality SEO in order to talk or speak directly to a pain point of one of these 2 given personas, that is arguably a much greater use of your time than it is to try to go through a pay-per-click advertising sort of campaign. SEO can also reduce the cost of customer acquisition. And it can also, it's also responsible for 59.2% of the world's web traffic. Google organic search, not pay-per-click, but Google organic search, when they type in keywords, long tail keywords, semantic searches, where like they're using the words the way that they speak. When they go through and they do these different types of searches, it's responsible for 59.2% of the world's web traffic. So when you think, hey, my website is, when you think, hey, my website should be producing more, you're probably right. Your website might be able to produce more, but it might just be a matter of organizing the way that the content is being propped up in order to get the effect that you're looking for. So in understanding all of this, these are all the reasons why we need to really focus on SEO. There's basically 2 different approaches that you can take when it comes to SEO. And I might be showing my age here, but big fan of Mad Magazine. So you have 2 different approaches here, right? You have white hat and you have black hat. Now, in white hat strategies, those align with the with what the Google Webmaster Guidelines are, right? So they try to improve. I mentioned search engine results page or SERP. You know, when you start looking at SEO, SERP will come into play a lot. And all that means is, where do you show up on the search engine's results page? Like in what order are you? Are you on the first page? Are you on the 10th page? Are you on the 100th page? So when you exercise SEO strategies that are white hat, that align with the Google Webmaster Guidelines, you have some outcomes there that you're looking at. And one is that they are less risky, meaning that you're playing by the rules. You have fewer revisions as a result of that. And the things that you publish and that you do on your website, both strategically and from a content perspective, will be more evergreen, meaning that they'll last a lot longer and you could repurpose them. Typically speaking, when you follow the Google Webmaster Guidelines, and you do it in a white hat methodology, when they do their algorithm updates, it tends to not disrupt or go against the processes that were already in place. It usually just adds another layer. Now, when you have that strategy, let's obviously look at the opposite side of the house. If you were to go with a black hat strategy, and this is obviously going to go against the Webmaster Guidelines or with the intent of gaming a system. So whenever you game a system, you also run a lot of risks. Those potential outcomes include unpredictability, because as Google does their job is to obviously help support all the users that are using their search engine to find the things that they're looking for. So if they realize that there is a group of people at mass that are using a certain strategy, a black hat strategy, to game the system, their next algorithm update will be likely something that gets rid of the potential of using that. You might have heard way back in the day something called keyword stuffing, where you could say, I want to be known to be, in staffing. I want to be in IT staffing. And so what you would do is, on the in the white space on the website, you would put in IT staffing all over the place in white. And that's keyword stuffing. Well, clearly Google recognized the fact that this was a problem, because it was throwing up all these websites that were just using a whole bunch of keywords. and their next algorithm update got rid of that. So now like all those people who were doing that started getting negatively scored on those pages, which obviously created a problem. And so that moves into detrimental risk potential, right? So if you have a website, you're generating a lot of business out of it, and you're doing one of these black hat strategies, if an algorithm change happens that goes against the gaming that you're doing, now you have to make a quick adjustment. You have to heavily monitor your website, and your response time really needs to be urgent in order to make sure that you could stay in front of that. Honestly, black hat strategies might give you a short-term win, but white hat strategies are the ones that I think are the ones that are there for the long haul. So everything that we're going to talk about today has nothing to do with gaming. So everything that we talk about today, we're going to be talking about white hat strategies that are safe, they're more evergreen, they're less risky, and they'll require fewer revisions over time. So let's dig into some terminology. So you do have three fundamental components of SEO. You have technical, you have on-page, and you have off-page. And we're going to go through all those at this point. In this case, we have technical. So technical SEO is really optimizing your website for crawling purposes to make sure that the search engines can index you properly. So some of the components that you're looking for from a positive or from a technical SEO perspective is your page speed. So making sure that your pages load quickly. Obviously, there's nothing worse than getting to a website and having to wait, which is crazy, like wait 3 seconds for a page to load. You're like, what's going on? So page speed is important. Resolving 404 errors, which are basically like dead URLs. So maybe you had a web page that was .com / best hiring practices. And then at some point in time, you changed it and it was 100 best hiring practices. So you changed the URL. That old URL still exists. It's still floating out there in cyberspace. And so what you'd want to do is do a redirect for it to the updated URL. So as you're going through, and this is a very common occurrence, as you're going through and your website evolves, you could end up with things where you have dead URLs. You'll want to obviously remedy those with redirects. Duplicate content can happen as well. That's generally speaking when people tend to clone their pages. You have certain elements on a page like meta descriptions and things that if you're not careful, you can end up creating duplicate content from one page to another. That's a no-no. You might also have something, let's say in an employer-centric space that you've built out in a container and you say like, this is great. Like these terminology, these words, like I've wordsmithed, the most amazing elements for our business. That's great. You cannot just take that and then paste it around your website. But what you can do is create it as a global container, and then you can use it around your website. And then by identifying it as global, you resolve that duplicate content situation. Ensuring modern JavaScript, making sure that it renders properly, and also implementing a schema markup. So what's schema? Schema markup is this. If you were on more of like the geeky side of web development where you're doing more of the coding, which I'm a bit more like, I have a dev team that does like all the coding. I'm a bit more of a template guy myself where like drag and drop is where I'm safe. So typically speaking, if you're working inside of a theme, those themes will already have embedded in them a schema markup. And what a schema markup says is that this field that I have filled in is dubbed a title. This field that I have filled in is dubbed an event. This field is dubbed body copy. And so it basically defines the content structurally from a coding perspective. So making sure that you have those things set up properly, again, so that search engines can crawl you and they better understand, oh, here's the title for this page versus here's the body copy for this page, and they can set the hierarchy necessary. So if these are the components, the SEO tactics that you'd want to be able to use in order to remedy any technical SEO issues would be to either remove any old or unused plugins. So many times, we might find that we run into a situation on the website. You have an idea that you want to be able to move forward with. The fastest way to do that is, instead of engineering software or do custom coding, let's just get this plugin and do this thing right away. If you're not using that plugin anymore, if that's not an element that's on your website anymore, get rid of it, right? Deactivate it, remove it. It'll keep your website nice and lean, and it'll only load the things that you're using on a regular basis. Update your CMS. CMS is a content management system, is what that stands for. So updating your CMS would be like updating WordPress, or maybe you're in Expression Engine or Craft. In staffing, you might be in Shazam Me. Making sure that the software where the website lives is up to date and current is important. Also, your theme and all of your active plugins. Again, if they have to work harder to kind of get through things, that's going to affect your load time. It's going to affect the candidate and the client experience, so and your visitors experience, and then obviously it starts to degrade your technical SEO scores. Standardize your website files. What that means is like especially now, like with the cameras that are in phones and in the number of megapixels that you get on things, you can blow things up to be billboard size. You don't need a landing page hero, that big image at the top. You don't need a landing page hero to be the size of a billboard. You don't need it to be 5,000 pixels by 5,000 pixels. You might only need it to be 500 by 500. So again, instead of forcing the website to have to open and consolidate that image, do some of the work for it in advance and make that sort of that live real-time edit, make that less intense for the site to have to manage. You could also add caching software, which basically, again, it keeps things sort of loaded for individuals who have come back to your website, so that way it loads a little bit easier. Again, remove duplicate content and resolve your dead pages with redirects. So those are all the things from a technical SEO perspective that are important to ensure that search engines can crawl you properly. So as we move away from technical SEO, we're going to move into on-page SEO. I know that these things start to sound very familiar or very similar, and they probably start to mash, and it's okay. Just know that technical SEO, again, more foundational. On-page SEO, a bit more structural. Yeah. So on-page SEO is really how you're structuring your content keyword optimization. So that is things like your title tags, making sure that on any of the pages that you have, that they're titled appropriately to match up with the message or the context that you're trying to share in that space for your visitor. Your meta descriptions, if you don't know what a meta description is, when you do a Google search and your search results page, that SERP page pops up, page number 1, usually you'll see a hyperlink with a summary right underneath it. That's a meta description. So ensuring that you have, again, appropriate meta descriptions. They're not generic. They actually relate to the topic that someone is searching for. They have your keywords in it, right? So again, it supports what your keyword strategy is. Your heading tags are important, obviously, to let the search engines know which is the heading. URL development is also sort of important. So as we look at keywords, you want to be mindful of the URL that you're creating. So, yourstaffingagency.com / probably blog / the blog title, right? What you don't want to do is throw a bunch of arbitrary but staffing specific keywords into that URL. What you really want to do is you want to throw keywords into the URL that are relatable to the topic that you're writing about in that blog, or the context of whatever the narrative is that you're sharing on that static page on your website. So making sure that all of these things are in alignment is where you get your strength in SEO. It's where all these things really kind of like come together and start to create a really sturdy structure around the content you're developing. And last, alt image text. So whenever you load an image on a website, whether that be like a photo or a hero image, could be vectors, like those little icons, the little iconography stuff. Anything that comes out of your media library, if you're in WordPress terms, it would be in your media library. So anything that's in there, you can apply alt text to. You can apply basically words to what that is, and they should associate to what that picture means in relation to the topic. So it gives you yet again another opportunity. If you think about everything that we're saying here with regards to on-page SEO, none of this is technical from how your site performs, how the page speed loads, whether or not you could find the URL. All of this has to do with, do the words all line up from the very top at the URL all the way down to the embedded images, does that content all line up? And so if you've lined it all up really, really well, it creates a nice, good structure. Now, when someone comes into that site, first, it really boosts your SEO of any of the keywords that you're trying to optimize. And second, if that page is found in the search results and the individual comes in and stays on that page, you have proven an awful lot back to the search engine, right? You've proven everything back to Google. So now Google says, wow, look at this, the behavior, that person stayed on the page for over 2 minutes. And then they clicked into another page on that website and stayed there. And so you start getting more credit and more credit against these keywords that you're trying to rank for. And that's how you end up influencing your keyword ranking. Yeah. So if these are the components, some of the SEO tactics we talked about a bit here, but reviewing your page schema, again, schema comes up. I apologize. So reviewing your page schema, making sure that your theme or your template, whatever it is that you're using, is appropriately associating what the coding elements are of that page so that the search engines don't have to work so hard to try to guess as to who you are. Bolstering your page descriptions with original content per page. So making sure that your meta descriptions, again, that speaks back to that duplicate content that we talked about in the technical SEO, ensuring that you don't have duplicate information in there. So make sure that all those meta descriptions are original and they align. Setting up global design parameters. This is speaking a little bit more to like how you handle your H1, your header tags. So, and these sort of work almost like a golf score, right? The lower the score, the better it is. So H1 is your top premier, and then H2 would be one down from that, 3, 4, 5, et cetera, until you get to paragraph or body copy. So you can set all those global parameters for like what you want it to look like, the style and everything else, but it also ends up assigning that H tag to it. Audit your media library. You can go in and see like what images do you have that don't have alt text on them, and simply find that image on your website and apply the appropriate context. And then you can also include your keyword strategy in the URL development. So, there was an argument back in the day as to like, the closer you are to the .com, the more important the word is, but I think we're pretty far away from that at this point. What it really boils down to is making sure that your keyword strategy is a strategy that is implemented fully and completely across all the components of your content on your website. And that closes out on-page SEO. So as we move from on-page, we are going to go to off-page SEO. So from an off-page SEO perspective, what is it that we're trying to do from off-page? Off-page is really your backlinking in order to earn link equity to improve your domain authority. So what does that mean, Jeff? Let me explain. If you have a website and that website has a domain authority of 15, let's just say you're a relatively new staffing agency and you're putting your pieces together. And so you have, sorry about that. You have a domain authority of 15. At that point, if you link to another website and that website has a domain authority of 50 and they do a link back to you, then what they're doing is they're saying, take my domain authority and know that I trust and validate this other website. And when they do that, you automatically get a boost from the fact that referring site that did the do follow link or at the bare minimum hyperlinked back to you, they're giving you a nod. They're adding credibility to who you are and telling search engines that they can trust you. So the off-page SEO backlinking sort of tactics and approach is all in an effort to extend beyond your website to other sites that have strong domain authorities that are seen as valuable content creators and publishers in order to help bolster your reputation. So some of the components in there would be creating valuable content that others are willing to share. I mean, it sounds like it's really simple, but it's kind of hard, right? So when you create content, you want to make sure that that content is something that that people will want to share, and And if they share it in other locations, then they will also end up creating your link in other areas. Outreach to relevant sites in order to promote content. So let's say you've written a blog or you've used some resource from another vendor, not another staffing vendor, but from a publisher. With that said, you can use that content to reach out to the person who's managing that site in order to let them know, hey, we at thebeststaffing.com, we just used your content. The information was so informative and so beneficial that we linked to it. We appreciate it very much. Would you be willing to do a link back to us? Would you be willing for us to do a guest blog for you? These are the ways that you can now interact with other publishers in order to see how you can extend your reach beyond your website. We do have a question that came in. I'm going to get to you, Scott, in just 1 second. I'm just going to finish out these last 4 points, and we're going to go right to you. Associations. So a lot of staffing firms are associated with different groups. American Staffing Association, SIA, Staffing Industry Analysts. Maybe you're at local chapters, New York Staffing Association, ISSA, whatever it is. All of those associations typically have directories. Those directories hopefully have an opportunity for you to plug in your website. When you plug your website link into that profile, that is a backlink. So making sure that any pages where you have your profile set up, that you investigate whether there's an opportunity to do a backlink, and you make sure that your link is there and present. Review sites, I know many of us talk about Glassdoor in a negative way, but Glassdoor does provide some link backs. But any sort of review sites that you might be participating in, directory citations, both hyperlocal and national. So any directories that you can participate in are another good opportunity for you to be able to, again, create corporate profiles and do link backs to who you are. And the last is public relations. Let me pause before I go into public relations. When it comes to directory citations, just please keep in mind, the more you reach outside your website, the more you have to manage. And so, we're working on actually building some content with regards to your corporate resolutions for the new year. And brand cohesion is one of those things that's really easy to sort of check off your list and make sure that you start managing better. But as you do more in more spaces, it does require you to manage and monitor those things more, right? Especially if you can get feedback on those sites, that you're replying to that feedback if someone gave you a good review or a bad review, that if you've updated some of your content, that it gets done universally across the line. If maybe you did a brand refresh, that too is also realized across all the areas where you're represented. So just keep in mind, directory citations are great. They're a great way for you to extend the brand and get more backlinks, but it does come at a cost. The last piece is public relations. So, and I'm not talking about, hey, we have a new office, let's do something in PR Newswire. That's not what I'm talking about. But there are resources out there where journalists are looking for individuals to supply really good content in order to help bolster whatever the topic is that they're talking about. HARO, right? Hire a reporter out, HARO. You can get set up on their news list and they'll send you something 3 times a day if you want, with all these different reporters that are requesting feedback from professionals in the marketplace. And there's a variety beyond that. Those are the areas where you can get amazing PR. Now, they're typically free, meaning that they don't cost you money, but it will cost you time. And it doesn't necessarily mean that they're going to get picked up all the time. But man, when they do, if you could strike it right, you could build relationships. Those are really strong opportunities for you to get the extension of the brand. I'm going to pause here for a quick second. I just want to get to Scott. Scott asked, what is the best technique to engage with other content creators to backlink to you, especially as a staffing firm? Great question. So many times what we do when we create content for our clients is we'll identify what resources we're sort of pulling from. There may be something that that provides a really strong data point, or maybe they've done some data mining themselves and kind of orchestrated that information. When we pull that information in, we cite where we got it from, and we make sure that we sort of give a nod in that piece to to that publication, at which point our backlink team does manual outreach. Unfortunately, it's a pretty thankless job, but they do manual outreach. And the reality is that not a lot of these convert, right? But if you do nothing, you get nothing. If you ask, then you likely get something sometimes. And so we do the manual outreach to say, hey, we just called you out. We just utilized your reference, your resource, and we appreciate it so much. Here's the blog. We would love it if you'd be willing to share it on your social media. We would love it if you can give us a link back. We would love it if we can do maybe a guest blog regarding it in your space. And those are the ways when you start doing an offer on something that helps them in what it is that they're trying to do, that's where you generally get a better return. And then what I would also say secondarily to that, Scott, is, think of yourself as like a mini PR person, right? The more of these relationships that you build, the more likely it is that you can actually get some yeses out of this. And so if there are information resources that you go to on a regular basis, you can likely build rapport with that individual or individuals who are managing that publication. It starts to become a lot easier for you to be able to get some yeses. And here's the thing. If you can get one link back, then you can probably get two. And the number of links, they all count separately. So if I went to, I don't care, whatever, publicationsource.com that I go to, if they did one article with me and I was able to give them 5 links from my company, those all count as individual links back to who I am. So all that stuff is how we go about it as a marketing agency, how we support our clients in trying to do that outreach to get that. We have another question that came in from Carrie, and my mouse is all over the place. So Carrie asked, does PR announcing an office location not necessarily help with backlinks? So to answer that question, the vast majority, when you do those things, they typically allow you to create a link back to who you are. But it kind of depends on the source. They may or may not even include it. It's kind of up in the air. Like I said, that's why I don't really do a whole lot when it comes to doing like office announcements or new people or whatever. I usually allow the client to just sort of do that on their own. It's not really an area that I can have any influence or that I can, that we as a group at Allied Insight that we can really drive. But what we do work with is we do work with publications where we tend to reference them. And we're building our own relationships in those spaces so that way we can get more yeses in that category. So, but I'm with you. Doing PR announcements on office locations, it's kind of a really old concept. And it's still done. It still does sometimes give you a link. It's just not many people are searching for like your new Minneapolis office, let's say. You know what I'm saying? So like, it's not something, if people aren't searching for that information, then it sort of becomes a bit of a benign exercise. So hopefully that answers you, or that gives you the answer you're looking for. So if these are the components that we're targeting, then the tactics, and I think we already kind of went through some of these, right? But, ensuring that all your company profiles link back to your website. That's something that you can absolutely manage yourself. And it's something that you do get credit for from a backlink perspective. Network with pages that benefit from your thought leadership. So like when I say that, I mean, network with publications, right? Network with other sources that have similar audiences that can benefit from your thought leadership and all of your expertise as it pertains to staffing, recruiting, employment, regulation, payroll, everything that you can share. Network with those groups and start to build rapport and relationships in the same way that you do with your sales process. Communicate with the resources that you've used in your content and ask for a do follow backlink. That's a real thing, a do follow backlink. Again, it's sort of like a technical terminology, but that is a way for them to not only link to you, but give an affirmation of quality in that link. Add your staffing agency to relevant directories. Again, keep in mind that does sort of create a management thing for you as well. And then last, look for PR opportunities. And I'm not talking about PR Newswire as much as I am looking at like any sort of journalistic PR opportunities where you can answer questions, be seen as a thought leader. If you get picked up, then that becomes, strong PR for you, your brand, your company, and your people. So these are all the bits of terminology. I do have a question, which SEO effort has your team performed? So this isn't a poll. You could simply drop it into the chat panel, but I am curious if there's any of these things, and it doesn't necessarily have to be like the broad reaching, but are there any things that you have tried at your staffing agencies in order to get an effect from some sort of SEO component? I'm just curious what you guys may have worked on. So moving from here, we are going to get into some resources. So while you guys are answering there, we're going to continue to move along. So you do have some pro resources, right? Google Analytics and Google Search Console are both highly effective elements that you can utilize. They do come with a price, even though they're free. And the price is that you have to be able to learn how to use them within their ecosystem, right? They're going to prop up the information as what they feel is best. And that may not be necessarily the easiest for you to digest, unfortunately. So you have Google Analytics, you have Google Search Console, but there is a difference between the two, and you should have both. Most CMSs like WordPress and all the others, they have like a Google Site Kit is what it's called, making it very easy for you to transact and turn these things on. And it tries to help prop up, once again, information about your traffic and about your site. It just isn't necessarily the easiest to sort of manage through if you're not familiar with Google. So, but the differences between the two, Google Analytics is going to be more user behavior focused. So they're actually looking in that suite of software. It's looking at the traffic statistics, the anonymous behavior, the sort of flow visualization. If someone comes in on this page, where do they typically go to next? And where does your volume of traffic sort of go to? And even some goal monitoring. So you can plug in goals into Google Analytics to say, as traffic comes through any of these given pages, we want them to eventually get to this page and convert by filling out a form or doing whatever the activity is. And you can start sort of tracking the performance of that flow and make adjustments to try to improve the traffic into that end result. So Google Analytics, user behavior focused. So Google Search Console is more search engine focused. They're looking at more of the performance monitoring, the index reporting. So like whether or not it can crawl your website, they're looking at speed, and they're also looking at backlinks, because you can have toxic backlinks. Look, just like anything else, right? Like the positive typically comes with a negative. There's always a yin to the yang. In this instance, as you're doing backlinks, someone may pick up your website and link to you arbitrarily without you knowing. You don't have to request for people to link to you, obviously. You also, in the same way that you want to be proactive in trying to get backlinks, you also want to monitor your backlinks. So if you have someone that has a really strong domain authority and they link to you, you love it, right? Well, the same thing happens on the opposite side. If they have a poorly managed website and they have a horrible domain authority and they're seen as being toxic, then it can also bring your score down, right? So making sure that you're kind of managing all those things would be super important to do. Before we go into the next page, we're going to get into some sort of more powered tools that you can do. We do have a question that came in from Miles. He said, as a staffing agency, we get solid results with job seeker traffic, but struggle to get potential clients to our page. The challenge is in two groups. These are using the same search terms, but looking for different kinds of things. How do you better target potential future customers with from a keyword perspective? Miles, that is the $1 million question, sir. It's tough, right? Because the primary keywords, they're similar on both sides of the fence. What you'd want to do is you want to use more of a long tail keyword approach to how you're propping up your content. So it can't just be IT staffing. Like that's not good enough, because multiple people on both personas are looking for IT staffing. But what you might be looking for is, like staffing IT candidates in 2023. Now, that's not something that a candidate is going to be looking for. And I just for clarity, I don't necessarily know that that's a good long tail keyword. I'm just using it as an example. So please keep in mind if you go and search and that doesn't look great. I have zero time to sort of prepare for the question, but like that's the idea, right? Is if you take what it is that you're trying to identify, in this case, IT staffing, and you extend it out with a slightly longer approach to what someone might be searching for regarding IT staffing as it pertains to an employer inquiry, that's where you can start using your keywords in order to influence traffic in. Look, at the end of the day, you've got something that you want to keep in mind. It is always harder to build digital trust with a B2B conversion than it is a B2C conversion. I think of myself as a younger person. I signed up for a credit card and I got a free t-shirt. I was like, woohoo, got a free t-shirt, right? I gave my social security and birthday and everything, to get a free t-shirt. But as a business, I'm much more protective of my business because I don't want whatever that is that comes in to disrupt, the revenue that gets generated, my employees, my candidates, like all of my contacts. I don't want to obviously have a problem on the internal side, right? There's much more at risk. I mean, I suppose having your social security number creates a lot of risk too, but you get my point. In a B2C environment, you really don't have to do a lot to gain digital trust, but in a B2B environment, you do. So I would say instead of looking at just keyword tactics, look at your value propositions that you're creating from a B2B perspective and understand what it is that you need to provide in order to entice that individual to come into your space, to learn from you from a thought leadership perspective, and provide them an outlet, a CTA, some sort of call to action that gets them to move into the direction that you want, that allows them to sort of like self-describe who they are based on their behavior and give you an opportunity to focus in on that client. So hopefully that's helpful. Miles, if you want to talk about any of these approaches, you can certainly connect with me and I'll be happy to kind of go through and hear a little bit more in detail what it is that you're working on specifically and try to maybe give you a better help there. But hopefully that kind of gives you some good stuff. No worries. All right, cool. So these are the free tools. Let's talk about some of the paid ones. Yeah. So when it comes to paid, what you're paying for is convenience. And you have things like Moz Pro, SEMrush, Ahrefs, SE Ranking, SpyFu. SpyFu is a little bit different. Yeah, but they all basically kind of do the same thing. I will tell you at Allied Insight, our team uses SEMrush. That wasn't why they went up on the top of the thing. Honestly, it just fit better when I was putting this slide together. So there is no preferential treatment. You'll notice I put Moz Pro at the top of the list. And I do think their robot is a lot cuter than the little like fireball, if I'm being honest. So, but with that said, they're all going to do roughly the same thing. They're going to aggregate the information coming in from the different tools that you're using, like Google Search Console, Google Analytics. There's even Google Analytics 4 that's out at this point. So you should start to look at Google Analytics 4 to see what those differences are. But they're going to aggregate that information down and they're going to prop up your priorities for you so that way you can actually break things apart from a technical on-page and off-page SEO perspective. And that's really the benefit here. They're all premium products. They're all going to be a little bit pricey. And they're all going to require a little bit of time for you to sort of get your arms around it and get used to it. But I will tell you that getting accustomed to one of these premium products will definitely shorten your timeline to execute because it does bolster the appropriate information better than trying to weed through all of the free products yourself. So those are some products that you can certainly use. And last but not least, we are going to get into education. So the really cool thing is you could level up your SEO game and you can get these certifications or what have you. Many of them are free. The SEMrush Academy is free. The HubSpot University also has an SEO component. That's free. LinkedIn Learning, I'm not sure. LinkedIn Learning, I think, comes with your premium. So most of you, have a premium LinkedIn because of recruiting or sales or whatever. So you probably have it. I don't know if it comes on the free product. The Google Academy, some stuff is free, but they have also started migrating some of their educational stuff to Coursera, which is not free. Moz SEO is free. Yoast, I believe, is free. And Directive Institute is not free. So here are a variety of different places that you can go and you can get education about SEO. And at the same time, obviously, if you do this SEMrush one versus the Moz versus the HubSpot, they're also going to teach you their product, right? So if you have sort of narrowed your focus down and you said, I'm going to focus in on this given product. This one seems to be the right price point, has the right features, has whatever it is that we need for our staffing agency. Great. Maybe that's the one that you then go in and focus on, or have someone on your team focus on in order to get their certification through that academy. I will also say, even though we use SEMrush, I do have my SEO team go through and get certifications in other groups, because they will have a different perspective, a different tactic, a different approach. And even if we're not using their software, having that knowledge is really powerful for us to be able to then do a better job of SEO for our clients. So pick the software that you're going to use. Then I would say, make that software's academy your priority. And then from there, I would say definitely pick out a couple of others that might give a different perspective and give yourself a really well-rounded approach to your SEO game. So that is the educational piece. And that's all I have. Yeah. So when it comes to getting Googleable, look, it doesn't have to be a super scary environment. Honestly, anything is better than nothing. Yeah. So this is your long game. This is not something that you're going to be able to remedy anything overnight. I mean, technical SEO, you could certainly get in front of pretty quickly, but know that this is something that you can learn over time, you can implement over time, and you could measure over time. And with that stuff in mind, like, you do have complete and total control over how your site is working within the search engines. I'll lastly just say, you might have seen it on the footer. If you scan that QR code, you're going to go to an SEO page that we have. And in there at the bottom, there is a form. It uses SEMrush. So there is a form, and you can get a free SEO assessment of your website. It'll give you a basic overview of what it is that you have happening. And then if you want to be able to have a conversation with me afterwards and you want to talk about whatever it is, I'm more than happy to jump on and give you some other tidbits, or even plug you into our system and give you like greater detail as to some of the stuff that you could focus on. And all that is free. Yeah. Like, it's just as a element of you being here with TCI and with me. For this, I know I said 35 to 40 minutes. We went a little over, but for you guys spending time with me, I'm more than happy to try to give you any sort of assistance that we can. Yeah. What's the expression? Raising tides raise all ships. So we're all in this together. And Sherry, thank you so very much. I really appreciate you letting me be a part of this.
You're welcome. And we had great questions throughout. So
yeah,
that's why we went a little bit over. But yeah, we appreciate working with you, Jeff. This was great stuff. We're happy to provide it to our clients and prospects. And let me know if you need anything as well. Thanks a lot.
Excellent. Have a great day, everybody.
Bye.
Bye-bye.